Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Left of Str8 Show interviews, the premier podcast that shares the stories of our amazing LGBTQ community and, of course, fantastic straight allies, all from entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and let's start talking. Hey, friends. Today on the show, I'm thrilled to have Brendan Haley in studio with me. Brendan's a true multi-hyphenate talent, an award-winning podcaster, filmmaker, and graphic designer who's made a significant impact in the world of digital creativity and LGBTQ representation. You've seen his work on the hit series Eastsiders, the dark comedy The Jessica Cabin, the thrilling Fangoria Chainsaw Awards, and the queer horror anthology Grind. Brendan's visionary approach has earned him an AVA Digital Award, and he continues to push boundaries across film, TV, and podcasting. I can't wait to dive into his career and hear more about the stories behind the work, but first, let's take a look.
Okay, I'm gonna die if there's no Wi-Fi.
I'm really glad we decided to do this.
It's the name of the cabin on the listing. It's called the Jessica.
The Jessica?
You don't think she died here, do you?
Maybe.
Taylor, I think I'm in love with him.
He doesn't even know we exist.
We don't.
Alrighty, we are back. That was scenes from The Jessica Cabin from my very special guest today, Mr. Brendan Haley's in studio. Brendan, how the heck are you?
Hello. I am good. Thank you for having me on the show. I've heard so many good things. I have been behind the scenes while you've recorded other interviews, so now it is the time. Now it is my time.
I appreciate you, and it's about damn time. I've had your handsome boyfriend Michael on quite a few times, and we got to have you in Palm Springs and hang out, but we didn't have room for you on the couch, so to speak. So now it's Brendan's time to shine, my friend.
I do have to say, I admire, and I probably said this when we were in Palm Springs, I really admire how you have sort of an antiques roadshow traveling quality to the podcast. Like it's admirable as someone who also works in podcasts quite a bit. Like, how do you do it?
Thank you, my friend. I don't know yet, and when I get it done right, I'll let you know. You'll be the first one, but it is a lot of fun, and we're going to be going to New York soon and doing a week worth of shows in New York with some of my Broadway friends. So yeah, it's fun, but it is a lot of extra work. So I appreciate the accolades, my friend. Thank you.
Well, power to you. Power to you.
First time on the show, I always like to ask two questions. Let's start by where did you grow up and what kind of a kid were you?
Oh, God. Deep, hard-cutting questions right away. I am from Los Angeles. I cannot get any more stereotypical with it. I was born in the heart of Santa Monica, grew up in a family of industry professionals. On one side, graphic design, the arts, animation, and on the other is voice acting and acting in general, theatrical, television, you name it. So I feel like the industry and what I do now as an adult it's been pre-baked into my DNA. I've been doing it for as long as I can remember, and probably will do it as long as I'm alive, and probably a little bit after. So
there you go. Ooh, I like that. Portending things to come. And of course, you're part of an out and proud community in the artistic world there. Talk to me about when did you think you started coming out to yourself, and where do you feel you started finding your LGBTQ tribe, or was it the horror tribe first?
You know what's really interesting, and I was not anticipating talking about this quite on the show or really to anyone outside of myself. I literally, in the last hour, I'm working on a script right now that for whatever reason, I've been connecting and thinking a lot about exactly this, sort of the key moment as to when I sort of figured out who I was in the world and everything. And that's a very big part of what's inspiring this script. But to the question at hand, I think it was always there. The stereotypical answer, for lack of a better term. I don't know. I remember seeing I remember seeing representation on television early in my life, like Queer as Folk, or that's not even the best example, but the shows in the early thousands, the late 90s that had queer representation at the time. I remember seeing two men kiss, and I remember thinking that was crazy. That's like the thing. That's what I want, and just sort of living with that, but not knowing how to live with that for a number of years. And then, as tends to be the case, getting into my teens and being like, oh, this is not going away. This is the thing that I need to figure out and understand about myself. So yeah, that really, I would say my entry into the industry and how that sort of intersected is I became very politically active back in 2016 with, a small election that you might have heard of at the time.
Good time to do it, yeah.
Yeah. And I was sort of at a crossroads in my life where I was coming out of essentially childhood and my teenage years, and trying to figure out how I wanted to move forward in my career and also marry that with my identity as a gay man. And I was very fortunate at that time to get an internship with the Advocate, which is one of the oldest queer-led, queer-focused magazines in the country. And they were incredible. They basically taught me everything that I know about media and broadcast and marketing. And I've kept a lot of those skills with me over the years. It's influenced my work in film, in graphic design, and I owe them a debt. So that's sort of how that came to be, if that's not too long of an answer.
That's a perfect answer. I love that, because you go one of two ways from the people I've talked to that kind of grown up in a family around entertainment. Either kind of run towards it because you see the magic behind it, and a little bit of you're not overly disillusioned from the magic that's not behind it, or you run away from it completely and end up becoming an accountant or something, right?
And so I feel like there's always that threat going on with me. I frequently reference Los Angeles and its culture as being a family member. I love it and I hate it and I want to strangle it at times. But at the same time, it opens you up to having a bunch of different opportunities if you're willing to take the chance. And, like a family member, if you're having a conversation with your uncle, you're going to have one experience, whereas, a conversation with your aunt, different influences, different artistic themes, different interests. So it's the same thing with the industry. I sort of, no matter what era of my life, the city has influenced me to pursue podcasting or pursue design, or, just sort of keeping all of these things with me is the hallmark of what I do. So.
Right. And I think you grew up in a great time because you're so good at graphic design, and that was such a big element. If you learned that around the time you were growing up for it, that gives you such a background that I would imagine's got to help your filmmaking and everything else you kind of go into to have that artistic eye or something. I'm sure that helps a lot. How do those two worlds combine for you?
It depends on the project, I think. The one part of it that we haven't touched on that I just hadn't thought to mention is there's also a music aspect to my life that I was very involved in an organization called Los Angeles Children's Chorus for a number of years here. And so for me, when it comes to producing a movie, or if it's something of my own, something that I'm writing, planning to direct, there's one of two ways that it's going to go. I'm either going to build out the film visually through a pitch deck or through storyboards, and not even having a full story. If it is there and it sticks with me and I'm like, oh, this is something interesting that I want to follow, that probably is the story I want to tell. And the same thing with music. A lot of the time, the film that I was talking about earlier, the script that I'm working on, it's part of a series, and I sort of locked in those stories quickly by creating these ambience tracks. Is a weird term to use, but they're moods. It's coming up with just a flow of the story by using sound effects and music to influence how I know the story is supposed to work out in terms of its beats, but haven't fully cracked yet. So there's no wrong or right way to go about creating a movie or creating a story. And I think those are examples of that.
I love that. I didn't even know about the music aspect, so that's kind of exciting to hear about. I love that part of it.
Oh yes, my Cruel Intentions high school experience. That's what I like to. It's truly. I don't think we have time for that, but that is. It's a great organization. They're very prolific. They have a lot of incredible artists that have come out of it. But it is sort of this is my biting comment. A little bit of a breeding ground for the Hollywood elite. That's kind of a great way to describe it, because everyone's, usually from some kind of family in the industry.
Right.
And, shenanigans ensues. But it was a great time. I got to travel Europe because of them. And
Nice.
I have friendships that I still keep with me today because of them. So, same thing, family member. You love them and you hate them at the same time.
That's fantastic. Well, you either have the luck of the Irish with a good name like Brendan, or you have a very discerning taste, because your projects, I mean, East Siders knocked it out of the park, a cult favorite. I had Kit and John on way back in the day. We talked about your AVA award for your podcast. You got the movie that we played in the beginning, got 3 different awards all over the place. I mean, you are having some good runs of fortune there, my friend. You have a great eye for these things. Talk about, how do these things come to you, and how do you have a feeling about them, or is it just what's happening here?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I cannot talk about my work in film, television, entertainment, the works, without talking about Kit and John, without talking about East Siders. That was really the biggest push. I knew I always wanted to work in the industry, but at the point in time where I came on board that project, I had been doing more hosting. I'd been doing more nightlife and events and journalism work, and sort of that space is where I existed. So I had met Kit and John through that world. We had worked on a couple of lower scale projects, and they liked me. They brought me in to work on fundraising for the final season of East Siders, and from there, I sort of wiggled my way into all the different facets of production, from set design and wrangling extras to producing and financing and all the whole picture, which is crazy because that's a very large show. So it's basically throwing yourself in the deep end. That's the best way to describe it. That you're dealing with all kinds of talent and personalities, both on the distribution front and the cast front.
Right.
You're dealing with real budgets. It was magical, and I learned everything that I know from that set, and I still work in that space. So I'm very grateful for that.
That's fantastic. And you've been doing so well keeping the LGBTQ themes throughout your projects you've worked on, in front of the camera, behind the screens. Talk about, has there been any challenges working in this kind of a realm, or has it just been more rewarding, or a good combination of both? Talk about that.
Well, what can I say? What can I say on air and on the record? No, there have definitely been a lot of instances in my career and in my personal life where I've interacted with people who don't understand the value in queer representation or in queer art and queer stories. And I have sort of gotten myself to a place now where I've worked on East Siders. I've worked on bringing my own company together and championing horror and queer media together, apart, all of it. And now I sort of find myself only interested in telling queer stories in some capacity. A lot of the time it is horror, but I'm much less interested in working on the next Marvel movie in some capacity. I would much rather tell like a story of 2 troubled teens coming to terms with their identity, or better yet, a mature queer couple of some, identity, figuring out where they exist in the world. Those stories are better because I identify with them and I know what they're talking about, and we need more of that in the world.
It's so nice when you run across that. I actually saw a film the other day called All Kinds of Love that's coming out very soon. And it's one of the old fashioned rom-coms. Everything's been so gritty lately, right? There's a big emphasis on grit and behind the scenes, everything. And this is just a good old fashioned LGBTQ love story rom-com that's a lot of fun. So there's so many genres out there. And like you said, horror is such queer coded, always has been. I ask all of my guests that have come on that work in the horror realm, what do you think is the draw for that, and what is your draw to this genre in particular?
I mean, I think it's very easy to see the connections between. It's very well documented, the connection between horror and queer narratives. I mean, you can look as far back as Frankenstein and
Sure.
or Dracula and see a comparison between queer identities relating to the monster, because we are othered as they are othered, and that's sort of, you know, how the world viewed us for a long period of time and still views us. We have gotten better and made strides, but they still view us that way. And I'm so sorry. What was the other half of the question? I got so carried away.
That's kind of, no, that was pretty much the gist of it, is just where do you find the intersection? How does that kind of queer coding work, and what draws you to the industry? Is there anything separate? What brought you to the industry? What makes your interest in horror?
I mean, I love horror, and that's not something that I ever thought I would work in. I was a very scared little kid. I loved, you know, my fantasy novels and my movies, and I loved world building. That was always the thing. I loved creating a world for characters or toys to live in. That was the big draw as a kid, and that's translated into my adult life. And I think my specific part of horror and genre is a little bit more campy, because obviously I produce a lot for other people, so those are a little bit different. Those are going to have a different flair, but anything that is my own creation is probably going to be very closely influenced by the work of John Waters, or, you know, the work of the classic Universal monster movies, and some of the Corman movies from later on. A lot. I'm trying to think of like the best way to describe it, but a lot of the scripts that I work on now or have been workshopping around town, there's a lot of campiness, a lot of drag, and a lot of blood and guts, and those are the things that I want to see all together.
Right. Nice. I like it. Well, let's go through some of these works here, because I love, we're talking spooky season and different things. Let's start with Grind. What kind of messages did you kind of have or hope to get across in the anthology? I thought it was very well thought out. Talk about putting that anthology series out there.
So I am actually a little, I haven't fully seen the final product yet, and I think they're still in editing on that, because we shot Grind this summer. That is one of my very dear friends and a mentor of mine on Eastsiders, Bria Grant. That is sort of her horror contemporary thriller story. That is her baby, along with Ed Doherty, co-creator and director, writer, producer, the whole shebang. And I was very fortunate to be brought in on that as an art director, and I worked on 2 of the 3 segments and did a lot of prep work for the third. So I'm just as excited as you to see it. I know some of the really, really cool effects that are in there, and I think audiences are going to be really pleasantly surprised.
And talk about podcasting. I mean, you just killed it with the AVA award. I love the title of it, Listens from the Radio. Talk about where that concept, I mean, it's such a fun concept. How did that come to you?
Thank you. So It Listens from the Radio was my COVID baby. I had nothing to do. I was trapped indoors, much like all of us. And bringing it back to the Corman love of it all, I have a very long-standing affinity for B-list horror movies, and these are the movies that we have so many talents that come from them and got their start from them. And so I remember putting together this zany idea on a dare to create a story that basically was a love letter to those movies like The Blob or The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and see where it took me. Just create a space to create for myself and fill the void of that period. And what was really cool about it is a lot of people got on board with the project really quickly. A lot of collaborators on the writing front, a lot of collaborators on the voice acting front. And so it sort of morphed into what I like to call a creative sandbox, where creatives, friends, colleagues, I invited a bunch of people in to play and create something that they typically wouldn't be able to. And that's sort of what that experience was. And I have other versions of it in the works to live again outside of the audio space, but we'll see what happens with that.
I love that. I got to come back if that happens. That's amazing. And you got a couple of current projects going on. I love, we have the current Zombie Outside movie with my good friend Ben Bauer, and you work with your boyfriend there. That's been going all over to quite a few little screenings lately. How's that reception, Ben? Let
It's
everyone know
been
what that
amazing.
movie's about.
We are actually about to leave town for another film festival. We just came back, Michael and I, my boyfriend, the writer and director of the film. We just debuted it in California at San Diego, Film Out San Diego, which is an incredible festival. And we are going off to Palm Springs in, I think, the next couple of days to do the same thing. It's been great. I'm very thrilled to see people responding well to it, especially because it is so overtly a queer narrative, and we need to support all of those. We need to support as many of those as possible. I'm very, very proud of that, and I'm very proud of my man.
You should be. It's amazing. I mean, you guys do amazing work separately and together. I love when you can kind of work together. I know we talked about some projects you guys have worked on that you didn't even know you were going to work on together at one time, right? So
it's true. We don't typically, or we haven't typically worked together in the past, and it's just both out of necessity, and also we share an apartment, and he frequently will see props that I'm building or graphics that I'm building. So like, it makes sense that we would combine our efforts at some point. No, it's been really great fostering that part of our relationship, because there's a lot of care and a lot of dedication to the art and to the context of what we're trying to do there. So I think it's a bonus.
I bet. And let's talk about, I'm so excited about Queer Horror, your film guide. I mean, you did the cover art for this book. Talk about, let everyone know what it's about, what they can expect from it, and how was that to work on that?
So I was brought in, speaking of projects involving my boyfriend, Michael was working on this guide, this comprehensive film guide of every queer identity associated film out in the world, and specifically in horror. And it was a number of years in the making. Sean Abley and Tyler Dupuy, who were the creators and editors of the book, brought a bunch of people in, Michael being one of them, to contribute movies and entries and their thoughts. And I think it was about 2 years ago, I got an email from Sean asking if I wanted to do the artwork for the cover, and me, with my sentiments being what they are, I was like, this is the most important work, so yes, I will do it. And I've been shocked by how incredible it's been, by how incredible the fans have been. I keep getting emails to my one of my art specific accounts from people who've been purchasing the book out there, who are fans of the artwork, and it's prominently placed on their bookshelves. And that to me is the crazy thing, because I never expect that. It's a perk when I get to see somebody like my work. That's a big deal.
Well, you guys are a big deal, my friend. So you should be very proud of that, because it just looks absolutely amazing. Todd, do you ever get a little, I guess, Sybil, you're doing this graphic art, you're doing filmmaking, you're doing podcast making, you're doing writing. Does one kind of complement the other? Do you like being busy and able to pull them all together? Would you rather work one at a time? What's your work schedule like?
Oh gosh. Well, it's weird, because I can't write and then 2 seconds later illustrate. I need to detox. I need to shift gears. I don't know what that is. I'm sure there's a logical explanation for why my brain is that way. No, I think that's the necessity in today's industry, in today's world, both entertainment and beyond. I think it's so cutthroat out there, and it's so intense, and there's so many different talents, and it's so easy to foster your talents these days. Adding more and more skills to your arsenal just makes you better and more flexible with the jobs that are out there. And that's sort of, I feel lucky, because it's not something that I ever set out to do, but I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy sort of taking on another responsibility or another skill, because I feel like it does in some way affect my other work, and it does make me think better. So
Nice. Great answer. Well, we got to start wrapping it up, Brendan. Let me know. The business changes. You've been doing this now for 8+ years, and changes so rapidly after strikes and things like that. What advice would you give right now to up and coming either filmmakers or podcasters or something? What is a couple of the key things they really have to have in their belt or keep top of mind?
Ooh, gosh, this is a hard question. I would say don't be afraid to fuck up. And I know that's a little like, follow your dreams, but I have made so many mistakes over my career, and that, much like the conversation we just had about bringing on new skills, there are skills that I am teaching myself now that I am taking jobs on that require those skills. And I think you need to have a certain amount of daring and maybe even a little bit of mental illness to jump into the deep end, but it also forms how your work in that space comes to light. And I think that's really important. I think, at least for me, that's how I like to work. But also know your truth, and don't let anybody tell you not to do a story just because it's queer or too femme or too horror even.
That's great advice. There's entertainment world is littered of stories of people that have failed or had a horrible movie and come back 4 years, 6 years, 10 years later with a smash hit, right? You just got to keep knocking it out and trusting in your own gut.
Oh yeah. I cannot tell you how many projects of mine have been on the back burner for years. One of them in particular, I think, is almost just shy of a decade. And I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't love it. And I know that it's going to happen one day. So.
Well, Brendan Haley, it took way too long to get you on the show. I appreciate you taking the time. Let everyone know, do you have any upcoming projects or anything? You've talked about a couple things you tease. Entertainment business is so tough to let everyone know what's going on, but anything that you'd like to have people keeping an eye out on?
Oh gosh, well, Grind, as you mentioned earlier, that anthology, I do not have a date for it yet, but I know that it will be coming out soon in either film or television capacity. I am not entirely familiar with where it resides right now, but there's a lot of brilliant people involved with that, so make sure to check that out. The Fangoria Chainsaw Awards is coming up next. That is a project that I have production designed for the last several years, and this year included, and that will be out on Shudder and AMC Plus, I think October 13th on Shudder and AMC Plus. Oh wait, I said that already.
And you usually have a little cameo in those awards. If nothing else besides the design, you get to play in those. So
that is right. Fun. I am, if you did not know it, now you know, I am the Fangoria backstage butcher. I am their slasher. And that is truly just happenstance. I built the costume and I built the mask, and they needed someone to wear it. So there we go. Now it's a gig.
How fun is that? Well, Brendan Haley, remind everyone where they can find your incredible work. They can follow you on Instagram or website or anything. Let them know the best places to get to follow you along.
Yes, well, I am on Instagram and Twitter at Brendan Haley, or rather, Instagram, Brendan Haley, Twitter, X, Brendo Hales, and you can find my artwork out in the world under the banner of Haley Doodles. It's linked in everything that I am, so it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Fantastic. Well, Brendan, enjoy spooky season, my friend. Guys, we're going to have a special 5 questions with Brendan next week, so be sure to look for that. I appreciate you, my friend. Thanks so much for being on the Left of Str8 Podcasts.
Thank you for having me.
All righty, guys. We will see you next time. Have a great week, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website for contests and other news and information. See you next week.